I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. Just a few minutes after the Golden Globes have wrapped up, I wanted to give you my thoughts on some of the real winners and losers of the Golden Globes. Yes, we know who won and lost, but what does this mean for the Oscar race? How is this going to affect things? Our first big award show of the night. We've been doing this every year for the past few years now and been having a lot of fun with it. So hope you stick around and subscribe to the channel if you're new and just hearing my thoughts for the first time. I had my predictions video, didn't do too well, but we're still going to kind of keep going forward here. Didn't do too well, which means that there were a lot of upsets, a lot of surprises. I've been doing this now for over 8.5 years on our 9th Oscar season, predicting things, and I will say this is, I think, the most unpredictable year in terms of the Best Picture, but also many of the key acting categories. All kind of want to discuss that here on this video. Not going to go category by category, but I'm going to talk about 3 winners and then 2 losers. If you want to hear my thoughts on either or category, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. And like I said, subscribe to the channel because we follow the Golden Globes, but also I've been counting down the Oscars and talking about those categories. Later on in the week, I'm going to give my predictions for Critics' Choice Awards. So there's going to be a lot in this next few weeks with SAG as well and DGA and all this great stuff. So feel free to stick around. But without further ado, let's jump into the winners of the night, what it means in terms of the ultimate Oscars and who I think got the biggest bump from the Golden Globes. And my first winner, I think actually the big winner of the night, is Demi Moore for The Substance. This was a movie that no one really saw coming, including myself earlier on in the season. Was it too weird? Was it too genre-y? It doesn't seem to be the case. It overperformed at the Golden Globe nominations. It overperformed at Critics' Choice. It even got in at some long lists in terms of BAFTA. Seems like this is a really well-celebrated movie. And then its win here, I think, is another kind of a sign of its strength, that not only can it get nominated, yes, and shortlisted in a bunch of places, sure, but also actually win. You know, what's always important to keep in mind when we're talking about how the Golden Globes will affect the Oscars is that they technically don't matter at all. I mean, there are no members of the Golden Globes that vote on the award show that overlap with the Oscars. It's talking about 300 or so people who vote on the Golden Globes versus over 10,000 on the Oscars. Completely different groups. And yet we still cover them because we've seen them have an influence. Not always, but sometimes. Ultimately, it is still the first televised award show. So oftentimes who wins or who doesn't win can have an impact. And we've seen big speeches that happen on the Golden Globes kind of help us understand who the ultimate winners are and help boost their chances if you have a really good speech on TV when you know everyone is watching. And I thought that was the exact case with Demi Moore, that she had an excellent speech giving kind of her pitch as to she's this actress that everyone loves, but this is her first time winning an acting prize, even though she's this iconic kind of an actress, and she was kind of maybe down on her luck, and this kind of really helped maybe revive her career now. So on one hand, you go, well, that's a great speech. Substance is overperforming. Maybe Demi Moore is the frontrunner to win right now. I maybe wouldn't go that far, but I would say that she's absolutely a contender to win, and I definitely think she locked up a nomination for sure at this award show by winning and by having a great speech. Now, it'll be interesting to see if that narrative that Demi Moore has of I was an borderline out of work actress who was a big blockbuster star who's now coming back and ultimately win the Oscar. It worked for someone like a Brendan Fraser, but in recent years we've seen those narratives not entirely work. You know, Chadwick Boseman didn't get an Oscar for his kind of posthumous kind of narrative in the same way. Even last year, I talked about how Lily Gladstone had a great speech, and I thought she was the frontrunner to win, and then she ultimately didn't at the Oscars because I think they just liked Poor Things a little bit more. You know, that may be a determination on Oscar night in terms of who the actual winner will be, so it's not a guarantee. I don't think this race is locked up, that it's Demi Moore's to lose, but I think she did a couple of big things today. I think her win signifies that there's a lot of support for the movie, a movie that I think will probably get nominated in a bunch of categories, definitely for Demi Moore for Best Actress. And then the question now becomes, well, who is the front runner? Is it still Mikey Madison? Depends on if she wins in Critics' Choice next week, or is it maybe going to be Demi Moore and she's going to run away with things? Really interesting interested to see how this one unfolds. But speaking about this Best Actress, this category, let's continue on to my second winner of the night, which was Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. Another kind of big, particularly for me, shock, surprise. I didn't really think she had that great of a chance to win, just because the arrow was pointing down, I think, for I'm Still Here after it kind of underperformed at Critics' Choice as well as the BAFTA long list. And yet she won here, and she's in a really unique position because I don't think her win here signifies a chance to win at the Oscars. I think right now her goal is just trying to get nominated. I say that because the classic parallel, I guess, between Fernanda Torres winning here would be in 2016 when Isabelle Huppert won for Elle. If you remember, that was kind of a surprise win on the night in its own right. And it ultimately propelled Isabelle to an Oscar nomination. And if you remember, Isabelle Huppert didn't get in for SAG, didn't get in for BAFTA, but did get in at Critics' Choice and had a lot of critical prizes kind of giving her support. And I think her win here kind of potentially challenged Emma Stone for the Oscar, but definitely kind of solidified her chance at a nomination. So that's the clearest comparison as well, because Isabelle Huppert was this legendary international actor in the same way Fernanda Torres is, in particular with her kind of lineage and legacy, which she mentioned with her mother on stage. But it's a little bit different than Isabelle Huppert because Isabelle Huppert did get in at Critics' Choice and did have a lot of critics' prizes. She won, I remember, Gotham and Indie Spirits and Los Angeles Film Critics Society, where Fernanda Torres doesn't have that. She didn't get in at Critics' Choice. I don't think she's going to get in for SAG. She wasn't even longlisted for BAFTA, and she hasn't been winning really the critics' prizes. So it's going to be a very interesting situation where this may be her sole win. She may not even get nominated at the Oscars. I think that's a real possibility. I guess the way I think about the Best Actress category right now is Mikey Madison, Carlos Sofia Gascon, and Demi Moore are pretty solid in terms of their chances of getting nominated. Then I would probably go Cynthia Erivo for Wicked in that fourth slot. And then that fifth slot, who knows? If Nicole Kidman gets in for SAG, I probably will go for her. But if someone like an Angelina Jolie gets nominated for SAG, because we know they like Netflix, the fact that Angelina Jolie lost here and then she didn't even make the BAFTA long list, even if she gets in at SAG, I probably won't go with Angelina Jolie, and I may go with a Fernanda Torres or Marianne Jean-Baptiste. It's such a really interesting fifth slot, right? You could reasonably say there are four contenders competing for that category, and they all have really great arguments for it. So Fernanda Torres, definitely a winner. She is my second big winner of the night because for a second there, she didn't get the BAFTA long list. She didn't get in for Critics' Choice. I wasn't thinking she was going to get in for SAG. I was like, okay, this is not really going to be a thing. And then she wins in this category and beats out Angelina Jolie and beats out, Nicole Kidman. That's a big win for her at a televised award show. So interested to see. Her win was necessary to kind of keep her name in the conversation, and I'll be interested to see kind of how this actress category develops. And then the final winner I want to discuss in this video is The Brutalist. It was the movie that I predicted would win for Best Director and Best Film Drama, and it did, but that wasn't the case of some of my other predictions. It was, as discussed a couple of weeks ago now with my updated Best Picture rankings, in my number 3 spot, and I mentioned on that video how it has everything on paper to win. I was just a little bit concerned more so about its kind of emotional connection with different Oscar voters, but its big win here, I think, it is telling. It, unlike a movie like Anora, which we'll be speaking about later, won everything that it needed to. It got in for Best Director. It got in for Best Film Drama, and I think won in a competitive race between Adrien Brody and Timothée Chalamet. Ultimately, Adrien winning for Best Lead Actor in a Film Drama. And now, particularly after kind of a Nora's stumble here, where I'm not really confident maybe in the lead actress win as I was 24 hours ago, now The Brutalist maybe has the clearest path to win for Best Picture, regardless of it being maybe not as emotionally engaging as past Best Picture winners. It may be the Oppenheimer route, where it wins for director, it wins for an acting prize, and then maybe some sort of technical category like a cinematography. Probably wouldn't go with score, but still always a possibility. It has that kind of a route, which is a stronger route than Conclaves or even Emilia Perez's or even Anora in terms of having an acting win, which is crucial, and then a directing win. And we mentioned on that video it's a streak now of 5 movies in a row. that won Best Director, also won Best Picture, so there's a strong correlation there, and I think Brady Corbet definitely solidified his odds at winning Best Director at the Oscars, and it already has an acting win, so everything on paper I think makes sense for The Brutalist, and yet, I still feel kind of unconfident. I'm not ready to say The Brutalist is the frontrunner, and then many times the frontrunner, when you say the frontrunner for too long, we see that happen with like a movie like La La Land. People get sick of it, and they want to go with the number 2, the underdog, and it's Moonlight that wins. So it could be Emilia Perez, it could be The Brutalist, it could be Anora, it could be Conclave. Very easily, I think the front runner coming out of tonight, at the very least, would be The Brutalist, just because I feel a little bit more confident in its Adrian Brody win as well as its Brady Corbet win, and then that's a clear path as well to win for Best Picture. But I'm still having those same kind of concerns that I've had and discussed before about the Brutalist maybe ending on a weird note and a little bit more artistic and definitely an achievement, but maybe a movie you respect more than you have an emotional connection to. All this is very interesting, and who knows? That's the fun of the Oscar race. It may come down to the end of things when we actually come with the Oscars in terms of who's actually going to win. So it was a fascinating award show, and the winners and losers definitely, I think, made some waves at the Oscars and who could win. Even though we know that there is no overlap between the voters, it still does give us a sense of who the frontrunners are right now, because the Golden Globes have been pretty accurate at least doing that, at least telling us who the main frontrunners are. But now, I don't like to do this, but we do have to talk about some of the losers of the night. And the big one has to go to Anora. I was expecting it to be a big night for Anora, screenplay, actress, best film, comedy, and it won none of them. And now, director, I think, was expected. It would have been a surprise if Sean Baker won there. Screenplay, you could say, okay, well, Conclave won, which we think is the adapted screenplay winner, so it's maybe in the number 2 place. But then it loses out on Mikey Madison, and then it loses out on Best Film, Comedy, or Musical. And those are tough blows for the supposed Best Picture frontrunner coming into tonight. That's what I thought. That's what a lot of people thought. That's what betting odds have it at least before the award show. So this definitely is a strike against the movie. It maybe indicates that there's not some feverish passion for it, that maybe it is, even though an emotional movie, the ending leaves you a little bit cold and that can hurt some people, or that maybe there's not as much of a clear acting win in the case of someone like a Mikey Madison. But what I think is really important is that the Globes don't really always correctly predict the Oscars. They didn't predict Everything Everywhere All at Once. They didn't predict Coda. But in a year like this, in a year in which there are no frontrunners, in which there isn't a clear-cut frontrunner, the Globes do matter in kind of just defining what those movies are. And the fact that Wicked went on stage and Emilia Perez went on stage, that squad, and The Brutalist went on stage, and even the Conclave writer went on stage. No one from Anora went on stage. Sean Baker didn't. Nobody did it, and that ultimately hurts the visibility of the movie and the idea of that the movie is a frontrunner, because we know Oscar voters were watching, we know Oscar voters were in the room, and it didn't kind of position that movie as a serious contender. I'll be very interested to see what happens with Critics' Choice. Anora definitely needs probably a picture win there and a Mikey Madison win there to keep its name in the conversation, because like I said, in a year where there are no frontrunners, the Golden Globes in particular, I think, have a defining area of trying to push them forward, just because even in the year of like Everything Everywhere All at Once, when it lost out to the Banshees of Inisherin, and it lost out in director and screenplay, Michelle Yeoh still got on stage and won for her category. No one from Anora went on stage. I think that's an important fact. And so it really is going to be fascinating. Anora may have lost a chance at winning Best Picture, and yet I'm still not ready to rule that out, because if Mikey Madison wins at Critics' Choice and at SAG, and then, who knows after that, right? So still definitely in the conversation, but a really fascinating night for sure. And then my other loser I want to mention is The Wild Robot. I didn't predict it to win Best Song, even though it was the favorite. It was a tight race. Best Score it wasn't going to win, but Best Animated Feature, losing out to that, I think is a big sign, because there is no defining reason why The Wild Robot should have lost. It had the most nominations out of the animated feature movies. The Golden Globes historically have always gone with the most mainstream Hollywood well-received movie. They've never gone with the indie movie. So the fact that they went with Flow is a huge sign of support. And also, I've seen the movie and I've seen the response for the movie. Flow isn't this weird independent movie that no one likes. It's a movie that everyone likes and has a really high approval rating. So the fact that the Golden Globes, which are a little bit more populist in their animated feature tastes, went with a movie like Flow as their winner, gives me more indication that Flow is actually the front runner to win at the Oscars as well. Because the Oscars, if anything, are a little bit more prestigious in terms of their tastes and more likely to give indie awards to the animated feature category than the Golden Globes are. So yes, sometimes the Golden Globes do some weird things, but mostly they are pretty indicative of what's going to win at the Oscars. And Flow, the movie, is not this weird artsy movie that no one's going to resonate with. It's a short animated movie about a cat that's wordless, that can speak to international voters as well as American voters. And I think The Wild Robot losing here and in Best Song indicates and opened up a bit of a hole for Flow to come through. And I would say actually Flow right now would be the front runner, my front runner to win for Best Animated Feature. Definitely something that would surprise me even 4 weeks ago. But that's about it. Those are my thoughts on the real winners and losers for the 2025 Golden Globes. Like I said, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Critics' Choice Award nominations when SAG and DGA is coming up soon. I'm going to give my thoughts on that as well. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on those videos. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.